He stood alone under the wide night sky. The wind was sharp and cold, cutting against his face. Around him, silence stretched, broken only by the distant sound of a dog barking and the rustle of dry leaves. His heart was heavy, and his thoughts were louder than the world outside. He still remembers that night, a night filled with fear, but also with a strange pull of destiny. The stars above him were countless, shining like tiny fires in the black sky. But to him, they felt like eyes, eyes watching, eyes judging. His name was Armin. He was not rich, not powerful, and not special in the eyes of the world. But inside, he carried a dream so big that it scared even him. A dream to rise higher than the world expected, to fight against fate itself. Yet, every dream comes with a shadow, and that shadow was fear. That evening, when the sun had fallen and the street lights flickered weakly, Armin had walked alone through the narrow lanes of his town. The smell of smoke from cooking fires, the sound of laughter from houses he passed, these were normal things. But for him, the night carried a different weight. He could feel it pressing on his shoulders, whispering doubts into his mind. Why try? Why suffer? Why not give up? The whispers were not from outside, they were from within. His own voice, but darker, crueler. He quickened his steps, as if running from his own thoughts. The gravel crunched beneath his shoes, echoing louder than usual, like footsteps chasing him. He stopped. He turned. No one was there. Only the shadows stretched along the walls, long and strange under the dim lights. He felt his breath catch in his chest. For a moment, he wondered if the shadows themselves were alive, watching him, waiting for him to fall. Armin had always been afraid of nights. As a child, he would hide under thin blankets, covering his head, praying the darkness would leave him alone. But now, as a young man, the night was not only outside, it lived inside him. The fear of failure, the fear of shame, the fear of being forgotten. He paused under a flickering streetlight. The bulb buzzed softly, and every few seconds the light blinked out, leaving him in sudden blackness. His heart thumped harder each time. When the light came back, his shadow stretched long, as if mocking him, as if reminding him how small he really was. And yet, inside him, something pushed back, a tiny flame. He could not name it, but it was there. Maybe it was courage, maybe it was stubbornness, or maybe it was pure desperation. Armin thought of his family, their tired faces, their worried eyes. They had always told him to be practical, to accept his life as it was. His father's voice came to him, steady but tired. Son, dreams are for the rich. We survive, that is enough. But Armin did not want enough. He wanted more, not for pride, not for fame, but because he believed life had to mean something. The night wind grew stronger, carrying with it the smell of dust and smoke. Somewhere, far away, a train horn cried out, long and lonely. It felt like the world itself was warning him. The path you choose will not be easy. Still, he walked on. Each step fell heavy, as if chains were tied to his feet. The chains of doubt, the chains of fear. Yet his legs did not stop moving. Something inside refused to let him turn back. He remembered the words of his old teacher, spoken years ago. The stars are far, but not unreachable. Those who dare, climb higher. Tonight, those words returned to him like a whisper carried by the wind. He lifted his eyes again to the sky. The stars shone cold and distant. Against them, he felt small, almost invisible. But in that smallness, he also felt a strange kind of power. If he was nothing, then he had nothing to lose. The silence around him thickened. Even the barking dogs had gone quiet. He could hear only his own breath, quick and uneven. He wondered if the world was holding its breath with him, waiting to see what choice he would make. Fear and hope fought inside him like two wild animals. Every heartbeat was a battle. Every breath was a decision. And then he heard it. A sound, faint but real. A soft whisper carried through the dark alley. He froze. His ears strained. Was it the wind? Or was someone there, hidden in the shadows, watching him? His skin prickled. The whisper came again, low and broken, almost like a warning. He turned quickly, eyes scanning the darkness. His chest tightened. He was not alone. The night had a secret, and he was about to uncover it. The whisper from the dark stayed in Armin's mind all night. Even when he reached home, even when he lay on his bed, staring at the cracked ceiling, he could not forget it. Maybe it was just the wind. Maybe it was only his imagination. But deep inside, he felt it was something more, a sign, a warning, or maybe a challenge. Sleep did not come easily. His small room was filled with the sound of the ticking wall clock, each second heavier than the last. His bed was rough, the sheet thin, but his thoughts were heavier than his body. Armin had a dream he carried since he was a boy. He wanted to rise above the small world around him, above the narrow streets, above the tired faces who lived without hope. He wanted to do something that mattered, something that proved that even a poor man's son could touch the stars. But life was not kind to dreamers. His father was a factory worker, hands always covered with oil, back always bent. His mother worked at home, sewing clothes late into the night. Every coin they earned was a struggle, every meal a victory. Dreams are expensive, his father would say, and we cannot afford them. Those words had cut Armin many times, but they never killed the fire inside him. Still, the fire often burned alone. No one believed in it, not even his closest friends. They laughed when he spoke of his plans. They called him foolish, said he was chasing shadows. And maybe, sometimes, he believed them. That morning, after the long, restless night, Armin sat on the old wooden bench outside his house. The sun was weak, hidden behind thin clouds, and the streets were waking slowly. Women fetched water in metal pots. Children ran barefoot, and shopkeepers lifted their shutters with sleepy hands. Armin watched it all and felt the same weight pressing down again. Around him, life was simple. People did what they had to do. No one fought against it. No one asked for more. Why should he? Why was he different? Because inside him, a voice always whispered, not the voice of fear this time, but the voice of hunger. Hunger for meaning, hunger for more. He thought of school. He had been a bright student, always curious, always asking questions. But poverty had cut his path short. Books were expensive, fees too heavy. He had left his studies halfway, not by choice, but by force. Still, even now, he read whenever he could. Old newspapers, borrowed books, even torn pages he found in the trash. Words were his secret weapon, and he guarded them like treasure. That morning, his younger sister came to him, her small face tired but her eyes soft. She placed a piece of bread in his hand. "Eat," she said simply. He smiled, but inside, his heart tightened. Even food was a struggle, yet here he was, dreaming of stars. He looked at her and thought, I must do something. I must change this life, not only for me but for all of us. But the road was long, and the world was cruel. He knew it. The whispers of doubt returned. What if you fail? What if you shame your family? What if you end up with nothing? Still, he pushed the thoughts away. He told himself that every great journey begins with fear. And maybe, just maybe, fear was a proof that he was on the right path. That evening, he left home again. The sky was burning with the colors of sunset, orange, red, and deep purple. The world looked both beautiful and heavy, like a painting filled with secrets. Armin walked fast, his heart racing, as if something important was waiting for him. He reached the small library at the edge of town. It was not big, not rich. The paint on the walls was fading, the wooden shelves cracked. But to Armin, it was a palace. The smell of old books, the quiet air, the sound of turning pages. It felt like a place where dreams could survive. He sat at a corner table, opening a borrowed book. His eyes ran across the lines, his mind drinking every word like water. Each sentence pulled him out of his small life and placed him into a bigger world. Heroes, thinkers, dreamers, they all spoke to him from the pages. But as he read, he felt the same fear return. The world outside the library was waiting. The struggles of money, family, society. Could he really fight them all? Could a poor boy from a forgotten town really stand against such odds? The library grew darker as the sun died outside. The single light above his table flickered, just like the streetlight the night before. Shadows crept across the shelves, long and strange. He lifted his head, and for a moment, he felt the same sensation again. The sense of being watched, the sense of something whispering in the dark. He told himself it was nothing. just his tired mind, just his fear. But deep inside, he knew the night was speaking to him again, testing him, reminding him. The stars were waiting, but so were the struggles. Armin closed the book and pressed his hand over the worn cover. The library was nearly empty now. Only the old keeper remained, sitting by the desk, his head bent low, lost in a newspaper. The air smelled of dust and paper, and a single ceiling fan spun lazily above. But inside Armin, a storm was moving. Every word he had read that evening reminded him of something he tried to forget, something he never shared with anyone, a secret so heavy it made his chest ache. He left the library as the night spread across the sky. The air outside was cool, but he felt heat inside him, the heat of shame and pain. His steps were slow as he walked through the narrow streets, his shadow stretching beside him. The secret was always with him. No matter where he went, no matter what he did, it followed like a dark companion. It was not only poverty. It was not only struggle. It was something deeper. When he was 16, Armin had lost his best friend, Rafik. They had grown up together, running in the same dusty streets, dreaming under the same sky. Rafik had been brave, fearless, always ready to laugh. But one night, everything changed. They were walking home from school, the road quiet, the moon sharp above. A car had come fast, its lights blinding. Armin froze. Rafik tried to push him out of the way. The next second, everything shattered. The sound of screeching tires, the smell of burning rubber, the scream that still haunted Armin's nights. Rafik was gone, and Armin lived. No one blamed him. Not really. Everyone said it was an accident, but Armin blamed himself. He had stood frozen, useless, while his friend had given his life to save him. That guilt became his shadow. That night became his secret. He never spoke of it, not even to his family. But inside, he carried the weight every day. Sometimes, he heard Rafik's voice in his dreams. Why you, Armin? Why not me? Other times, he saw his face in the dark corners, smiling but broken. And sometimes, like last night, like in the library, he heard whispers that reminded him of that night, whispers that felt too real. Maybe it was only his mind. Or maybe, deep in the silence, something truly whispered to him, something that came from beyond. As he walked home, the memory wrapped around him tighter. The street seemed darker than usual, the lamps weaker. His own footsteps sounded like another person walking beside him. He stopped at the small bridge near the canal. The water below was black, moving slow, carrying pieces of trash with it. He leaned on the railing, his face heavy with thought. He whispered to the water, Rafik, I'm sorry. I'm still here, but I don't know why. I don't know if I deserve it. The water gave no answer, only a hollow sound as it touched the stones. But the night seemed to listen. The wind brushed against his ear, soft but sharp, almost like a reply. You must carry it. Armin's heart jumped. He turned quickly. No one was there. Only empty road, only the dim glow of a broken street light. His hands trembled. He told himself it was just his imagination again. But he could not shake the feeling that the whisper was real, that someone, or something, wanted him to remember his burden, not escape it. He walked faster, almost running, until he reached home. The small house stood quiet, its windows glowing faintly with the light of a lantern inside. His mother was sitting on the floor, sewing, her eyes tired but steady. His father was not home yet, still at work. Armin sat in the corner, silent. His little sister brought him water in a metal cup. He thanked her softly, but his mind was still far away, standing on the bridge, hearing the whisper. He thought, maybe this is my punishment. Maybe I am not meant to rise, not meant to dream. Maybe I am only meant to carry this secret until the end. But then another thought fought back. Or maybe this is my reason. Maybe Rafik saved me because I must do something with this life. Maybe my burden is not a curse, but a test. The battle inside him was strong, sharper than ever. Later, when the house fell quiet and everyone slept, Armin lay awake, staring at the ceiling again. The night outside was alive with sounds, dogs barking, crickets singing, the distant call of an owl. Each sound seemed sharper, like the world was waiting for him to decide. He whispered into the dark, If I cannot change this world, then my friend's death means nothing. I will not let that happen." The silence answered him with a heavy stillness. Then, somewhere far away, he heard it again, the faint whisper, softer than breath, almost lost in the night. "Don't stop, keep walking." Armand closed his eyes, his heart racing. He did not know if it was real, if it was a ghost, or just his own desperate mind. But he knew one thing. The whisper gave him strength. He would carry his secret. He would carry his burden. And maybe, just maybe, he would turn it into something greater. The night was no longer only fear. It was a reminder, and Armand was ready to face it. Days turned into weeks, but the weight in Armand's heart only grew heavier. His secret burden, his poverty, his father's tired face, his mother's sleepless nights, all of it pressed down on him like stones. At first, he tried to fight it. He read books. He dreamed of a better life. He whispered to the stars. But the more he dreamed, the more reality pushed back. One evening, he sat at the small wooden table in his house. His father had just come home from the factory, his clothes covered in dust and grease, his hands shaking from work. He dropped his bag on the floor and sat with a deep sigh. His mother placed a simple meal on the table, bread, lentils, and water. They ate in silence. Only the sound of chewing, the creak of the wooden bench, and the faint hiss of the lantern filled the room. Armand's father looked up suddenly, his eyes sharp. "Armand," he said, "I hear you still waste time in the library." Armand froze. He nodded slowly. "Yes, Baba. I study." His father's face hardened. "Study? With what money? With what future? Dreams don't feed a family. Books don't pay bills." Armand opened his mouth to answer, but the word stuck. His chest tightened. He wanted to say that knowledge was the only way out, that dreams were the only light in their darkness. But his father's tired eyes silenced him. That night, Armand lay awake again. The whisper from the past felt distant now. Only his father's words echoed in his mind. Dreams don't feed a family. The next morning, the sun was harsh, burning against the tin roofs. The streets buzzed with noise, vendors shouting, children crying, carts rolling over stones. But for Armand, the world sounded hollow, empty. He wandered without direction, his feet dragging, his eyes fixed on the ground. His mind was full of shadows. He reached the canal again. The water was muddy, carrying broken sticks and plastic bags. He leaned over the railing, staring at his reflection. His face looked pale, older than his years. His eyes looked tired, almost defeated. A thought crept into his mind, a dangerous thought. What if I stop here? What if I let go? His hands gripped the railing tighter. The water moved slowly below, waiting. The sound of it pulled at him, soft and cruel. Maybe the world will be lighter without me, he thought. Maybe I don't deserve this life anyway. The wind blew against his face, cold and sharp. For a moment, it felt like the world itself was pushing him closer to the edge. His heart beat fast, his breath caught. And then he heard it, a sound, soft but clear, a child's laugh. He turned quickly. On the road behind him, a little boy was running with a kite, its tail flapping wildly in the wind. The boy's face was full of joy, his eyes shining, his laugh pure. The kite rose higher, fighting against the wind, rising despite the pull of the string. Armand's eyes filled with tears. That boy reminded him of himself long ago, before the burden, before the fear. He remembered how he once laughed, how he once ran with dreams in his eyes. Slowly, he stepped back from the railing. His chest still ached, his hands still shook, but something inside shifted. The whisper returned, not from the water this time, but from within his heart. Not yet. Don't give up. Keep walking. He wiped his face and walked away from the canal. His steps were weak, but they were steps forward. That night, the storm inside him was worse than ever. His father's anger, his secret guilt, his own weakness, it all crashed together. He sat alone in the dark room, holding his head in his hands. Tears fell. He let them fall. He whispered Rafik's name again, his voice breaking. I am sorry, my friend. I don't know how to carry this. I don't know if I can. The room was silent, but then something happened. The lantern flickered. The shadows on the wall stretched long, bending strangely. The air grew colder. Armand lifted his head, his heart racing. From the corner of the room, he thought he saw a figure, not clear, not solid, but a shape, thin, tall, familiar. His breath caught. Rafik? The shadow did not move, but he heard the whisper again, closer this time, sharper, almost inside his ear. Live for me. Armand's whole body trembled. He blinked, and the shadow was gone. The lantern burned steady again. The silence returned. But inside him, something cracked open. His burden was still there, but it was no longer only pain. Now, it was also a promise. He fell onto his bed, exhausted, tears still wet on his face. But before sleep pulled him away, he whispered into the dark, "I will not stop. Not yet." The next morning, Armand woke with swollen eyes and a heavy body, but his heart carried a new kind of fire. The whisper from the night, "Live for me," echoed inside him. Whether it was real or only his tired mind, he didn't know, but it gave him strength. He stepped outside into the early morning air. The sun was just rising, painting the sky with soft orange light. The streets were still quiet. Dew glistened on the leaves, and the cool breeze touched his skin gently, as if the world itself was telling him, "Start again." For the first time in weeks, Armand did not walk with his head down. He lifted his eyes. The small houses, the broken roads, the tired faces of neighbors, they were the same as before. But inside him, something felt different. A small light pushed against the darkness. At the tea stall near the market, he saw Mr. Kareem, the old bookseller who sometimes let him borrow books for free. The man's face was wrinkled like dry paper, but his eyes were sharp and kind. "Armand," Kareem called, waving him closer. "Where have you been? I haven't seen you in days." Armand sat on the wooden bench, the smell of boiling tea filling the air. I was lost," he admitted softly. Kareem studied him for a moment. "Lost? Or afraid?" Armand's throat tightened. He wanted to answer, but the word stuck. His silence was enough. The old man smiled faintly. "I know that look. I had it once too. The world is heavy, son. It makes you believe that dreams are foolish. But let me tell you something. Dreams are the only things that keep us alive." Armand looked at him with wide eyes. No one had ever said such words to him. Everyone told him to give up, to stop wasting time, to accept life as it was. But here was someone saying the opposite. Kareem leaned closer, his voice low but strong. "Do not let the world silence you. If you want something, fight for it. Even if your hands bleed, even if your heart breaks, fight." The words sank deep into Armand's chest. He felt tears sting his eyes, but this time they were not from weakness. They were from hope. He nodded slowly. "I will, Ustad. I will fight." The old man placed a hand on his shoulder. His touch was light, but his grip felt strong, like a bridge holding Armand above the flood of his fears. Before leaving, Kareem pressed a small book into Armand's hand. Its cover was torn, its pages yellow. "Take this," he said. "Keep it close. It may not change the world, but it may change you." Armand held the book as if it were treasure. He thanked Kareem and walked away with lighter steps. All day, he carried the book. He read it in corners, under trees, by the canal. Its words were simple but powerful. Stories of men and women who rose against hardship, who fought when no one believed in them, who found strength in their weakness. Each page felt like a voice speaking directly to him. Don't stop. Don't give in. Keep going. That evening, the sun dipped low, painting the sky with fire. Armand sat on the rooftop of his house, the book in his lap. His sister climbed up beside him, her small face glowing in the fading light. "What are you reading?" she asked. Armand smiled softly. "A story about people who never gave up." She tilted her head, curious. "Will you be like them? Bye." The question hit his heart. He looked at her innocent eyes, eyes filled with trust. For the first time, he felt he could answer without doubt. "Yes," he said firmly. "I will." She smiled and leaned against him. The wind blew across the rooftops, carrying the sound of evening prayers from the mosque nearby. The call echoed through the air, deep and powerful, filling the sky. Armand closed his eyes. The words, the sound, the wind, they all came together like a promise. In that moment, he felt Rafik's presence again, not as a shadow, not as a whisper of guilt, but as a guiding force. The memory no longer pulled him down. Instead, it pushed him forward. Night fell, and the stars returned. Armin lay on the rooftop, staring at them. They were still distant, still unreachable. But now, they no longer felt like eyes judging him. They felt like companions, like tiny lights reminding him that darkness could be broken. For the first time in a long time, he smiled. A small smile, but real. The road ahead was still long. The struggles were still heavy. His father's doubt, his poverty, his secret burden, they were all still there. But now, he had a ray of hope. And sometimes, one small light is enough to fight the dark. The days that followed were different. Armin no longer walked with his head down. He still carried his burden. But now he also carried Kareem's book, tucked close to his chest like a shield. The words inside gave him courage. His sister's trust gave him purpose. And the memory of Rafik gave him fire. But the world does not change easily. The more Armin tried to rise, the harder life tried to push him down. One evening, his father returned home angrier than usual. The factory had cut wages. The money they earned was no longer enough to cover food, rent, and medicine. His father's voice shook with frustration. "Armin," he said sharply, "enough of your books. Enough of your dreams. Tomorrow you go to the factory with me. You will work. That is final." Armin's heart dropped. He wanted to argue, to explain that he had other plans, that he wanted to study, to learn, to climb higher. But his father's face was like stone, tired, beaten, yet unbending. That night, Armin lay awake again, staring at the dark ceiling. His chest burned. Was this the end? Was he about to be chained to the same life, the same struggle, forever? The whisper returned in the silence. "Don't stop. Keep walking." He pressed his fist against his chest. "I will fight," he murmured, "even if no one believes me." The next morning, he followed his father to the factory. The air was thick with smoke and dust. The sound of machines was deafening, iron clashing, wheels grinding, hammer striking. Men moved like shadows, their faces empty, their backs bent. Armin's hands trembled as he touched the rough tools. His palms burned, his body ached. Sweat dripped down his face, and the dust stuck to his skin. Hours passed like chains, each heavier than the last. But worse than the pain was the sight of the men around him. Their eyes were hollow, their voices tired. They worked without hope, without dream, as if the machines had stolen their souls. Armin felt fear rising inside him. Will this be me? Will I die here, forgotten, crushed by iron and dust? At the lunch break, he sat alone on a broken crate, holding a piece of dry bread. His father ate in silence nearby, his shoulders slumped. Armin's hands clenched. He could not let this be his life. He could not betray Rafik's sacrifice. He could not break the promise to his sister. That night, after returning home, he made a decision. He would not let the factory chain him. He would find another path, even if it meant fighting against his father, against society, against fate itself. The next day, he secretly visited Kareem again. He told him everything, about the factory, about his father's command, about his fear of being trapped. Kareem listened quietly, then nodded. "Good," he said simply. Armin frowned. "Good? I don't understand." The old man smiled faintly. "Now you know the weight of the chains. Only those who feel their chains deeply can break them. You are ready." Armin's chest filled with heat. He asked, "But how, Ustad? How do I break them?" Kareem placed another book in his hand. Heavier, thicker. "Knowledge, my boy. Knowledge and courage. The world can take away your money, your home, even your peace. But it cannot take what you carry in here." He tapped Armin's forehead. "And here." He tapped Armin's chest. Armin held the book close. He felt its weight, not only in his hands, but in his soul. From that day, he worked at the factory during daylight because he could not refuse his father, and studied in secret at night. His eyes burned from exhaustion, his hands bled from labor, but he did not stop. The struggle was cruel. Many nights he wanted to give up, to close the book, to fall into sleep. But then he remembered the whisper. He remembered Rafik. He remembered his sister's innocent question, "Will you be like them? Bye." And he kept going. One night, as he read under the dim lantern, his father entered the room. His face was hard, his eyes filled with anger. "What is this?" his father shouted, snatching the book from his hand. "You waste time while your family suffers. You shame me, Amen." Amen stood, his chest trembling but his voice steady. "No, Baba, I am not wasting time. I am building something. I cannot live in chains. I cannot die in silence. I will fight. I must fight." The silence that followed was heavy, sharper than any shout. His father's hand shook. His eyes glistened, not only with anger, but with something else. Pain, fear, maybe even hidden pride. But he said nothing. He dropped the book on the bed and walked out. Armin stood there, his heart pounding, his breath sharp. He bent down, picked up the book, and held it close again. His legs trembled, but his spirit stood taller than ever before. Against all odds, against the weight of the world, he had spoken, and for the first time he felt truly alive. Months passed. Armin's days were filled with dust, noise, and sweat at the factory, but his nights belonged to the books. Every evening, when the machines grew silent and the streets fell asleep, he would light his small lantern and read until his eyes burned. His father watched in silence, sometimes with anger, sometimes with sadness, but slowly, with a quiet respect he did not show in words. His mother stitched clothes late into the night, often glancing at him with soft eyes, whispering prayers under her breath. And his little sister, always by his side, became his biggest cheerleader. Armin was tired. Yes, his hands were rough, his body weak, but his spirit had grown stronger than iron. The whispers of doubt still came, but now he had louder voices inside him, the words of Karim, the memory of Rafik, the trust of his sister. One day, news spread through the town. A scholarship exam was being held in the city. Students from poor families could apply, and if they succeeded, they would be given a chance to study, to rise, to build a future beyond the factory walls. When Armin heard this, his heart pounded. This was it. This was his chance. But fear came too. What if he failed? What if he disappointed his family? What if he proved everyone right, that dreams were only for the rich? That night, he stood under the stars again. The sky was wide, black, endless. But instead of fear, he felt calm. He whispered into the wind, "Rafik, guide me. Karim, trust me. Sister, believe in me. Baba, forgive me." The wind brushed against his face, cool and steady, almost like an answer. The day of the exam arrived. The city was loud and crowded. Cars honked, vendors shouted, and the smell of fried food filled the air. Armin walked through it all, holding Karim's book in his hand like a charm. Inside the exam hall, his hands trembled. Papers rustled, pens scratched, chairs creaked. But he closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He remembered the long nights of study, the sweat of the factory, the whispers of the past. And then he wrote. Hours passed. His pen moved fast, his mind sharp, his heart steady. For the first time, he felt in control, not of the world, but of himself. When it was over, he walked out into the sunlight. His legs felt weak, but his soul felt light. He had given everything. Whatever happened now, he knew he had not run away. Days later, the results came. The paper was posted on the board outside the school. A crowd gathered, voices rising, names being read. Armin pushed through, his chest tight, his breath shallow. And then he saw it. His name, written clearly, shining brighter than the ink itself. He had passed. He had won the scholarship. For a moment, he stood frozen. The world around him blurred. The sounds faded. The letters danced before his eyes. Then tears fell, heavy and unstoppable. He whispered softly, "Rafik, we did it." That evening, he ran home. His mother cried when she heard the news, her hands covering her face. His sister jumped and clapped, her laughter filling the house. Even his father, silent as always, turned his face away, but not before Armin saw the tears in his eyes. Later, his father placed a hand on his shoulder. rough, heavy, but warm. I was wrong, he said quietly. Forgive me, son. You are stronger than me. You are stronger than the world. Armin hugged him tightly. In that moment, years of silence, anger, and distance melted away. That night, he climbed to the rooftop again. The stars were there, countless and bright, watching from above. But now, they no longer felt far. They felt close, almost within reach. The wind carried the sound of the city, of prayers, of life. And within it, he thought he heard the whisper again, soft, proud, steady. Keep walking. Armin closed his eyes and smiled. Against the stars, against the odds, he had risen. The struggle was not over. Life would still test him. Change would still try to hold him. But he had proven something to himself, to his family, to the world, that even in the darkest nights, a small flame can burn bright. And sometimes that flame can light the way for others.